And now, surprisingly, we're going to add to the conversation somebody you might not have expected, but we always love to hear from him. Dr. J. Bhattacharya, professor of medicine at Stanford University, professor by courtesy of economics at Stanford, senior fellow at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and a senior fellow by courtesy at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. Most importantly, he was recently named senior COVID correspondent for the Ricochet Podcast, and he likes board games, which is really nerdy and dorky, and we love him for that. But I have to tell you here, we've been discussing freedom of expression, freedom of speech, all the rest of it, the constriction of the public dialogue. Which board game do you think will go first? I could ask you all about COVID because you are the guy who knows this stuff. But let's just get this.
I'll come to COVID.
Which I think Risk is the one that's going to be eliminated simply because it's an imperialist. It celebrates imperialism in its worst form.
I heard of there's a socialist monopoly. I don't know if you heard of it.
How long does it last is the question. Probably 4 or 5 rounds, and then everything collapses, and the money is where.
That's basically how it works, and we all lose.
You all lose. Okay, Jay, you got it. The punchlines have to come a little faster, Jay. He's a physician.
In the socialist monopoly game, eventually there are 17 go to jail squares as opposed to just one.
Jay, you're on with Laurence Fox, who has founded a party in Britain, and I am now taking the liberty of naming you his health advisor. Jay Bhattacharya, distinguished physician here at Stanford University, holds both an MD and a PhD in economics. He's a professor of public health at the Stanford Medical School and has published dozens of peer-reviewed articles. Now, Jay, I'm going to read to you a couple of recent tweets by Laurence Fox and his party, the Reclaim Party. They tweeted just yesterday, the Reclaim Party, end lockdown for good. And here's something that Laurence Fox tweeted under his own name just yesterday. Every day this madness goes on, that is to say the lockdown, another livelihood is destroyed and another life crushed. All right. You, as I just said, are an eminent physician, and I give you the opportunity to explain to this actor why his tweets are not only mistaken, but dangerous. Jay?
He's 100% right. Every single poor person on the face of the earth has been harmed by this lockdown in discrete ways. They're immoral and they should be ended immediately. I think with the vaccine, we have this opportunity to protect the vulnerable, the older population. We can use the vaccine to end the epidemic, break the spell of the lockdown. The lockdowns have not actually protected the populations in the way that they've said. But you see, though, that the UK has adopted this draconian lockdown, and yet the disease has continued to spread. People have died. In California, we've had this. My kids are still not in school, and somehow that's supposed to have protected the old people, but it hasn't. Old people in California have died at very high rates. It's this illusion that we have that somehow if we do this lockdown, we can protect the vulnerable, but it's just not true. So I completely agree. Mr. Fox, that there's nothing to complain about that tweet. I think
Mr. Fox, no, he's Laurence. You're Dr. Bhattacharya.
I barely just met him. We have to
Okay.
You have to be a little formal.
Now here's another one that this actor has tweeted. He's tweeting a reply to somebody who's suggesting that we should have vaccination passports, that you should be, to get on an airplane, to go about your job, you should carry a document showing you've been vaccinated. And so he writes, and Biden and Harris got their vaccinations publicly. Laurence Fox tweets, should everyone have a vaccination taken publicly, perhaps with photographic record? Now, to mock the idea of a vaccination passport is absurd, is it not, Doctor?
A vaccination passport is also immoral. I mean, I think if we had a public health that people trusted, and they would make some sense. Like if you look at vaccine hesitancy in the U.S., it's the poor that are hesitant. It's minorities that are hesitant. If you put vaccine passports in place, it's a straight up racist policy.
Whoa! That not only is that very serious to me, that's a completely new charge. Explain that. I haven't heard that before.
Well, I mean, who distrusts public health in the United States? It's minorities, and with good reason. But the lockdowns, which the public health authorities have embraced wholeheartedly, have harmed minorities. If you look in California, for instance, it's the rate of mortality among Hispanics is from COVID are 3.5 times more than whites. Who is skeptical of these vaccines? It's minorities, because they don't trust public health. And public health has earned the distrust that they have. I don't trust them. So I think I am very much in favor of the vaccine. I think the vaccine is a fantastic thing. I think if we had a public health authority where you could put trust in, they could deliver the message that it's a good idea. But I mean, people really don't distrust them for good reasons. There's also good medical reasons for some people not to have the vaccine. Like children, for instance, shouldn't have the vaccine. That's not been tested on children. To my reading of the literature, I'm not satisfied that they've tested enough on pregnant women. I mean, so I think there's a lot of legitimate reasons that public health, if people had trust in public health, could address, but we don't.
Jay, can I one more? Actually, I have another couple of questions. Then I'll fall silent and let everybody else. Actually, Laurence Fox may have a question or two for his new health advisor, Jay Bhattacharya. So, on this question, though, of the idea of a passport is in one way or another, it's a kind of mild, I think they believe it's mild, intimidation or coercion to get the reluctant people to get their darn vaccinations. Question. Between people who get vaccinations and those who've already had COVID, do we actually need the entire population to get vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity? And you know me well enough, Jay, to know that although I can use the words, I actually don't even understand the question I'm asking. Could you decoct that one for us?
Okay, so that's a complicated question. So first of all, just an observation. I think somewhere on the order of 40 to 50% of the American population, and that's I think same is true in the UK, have been infected with COVID. This is based on a calculation I can go into in some, but like basically there are many times more people infected than cases. That we know from a vast literature, including some seroprevalence studies that I've worked on. So if that's true, that means at least half the population is already immune, because infection conveys long-lasting immunity. So you don't need all of the population vaccinated to get herd immunity. You need the population that hasn't been infected to date. But I want to turn this and think about it from a public health point of view. What's the goal of the vaccination? The goal is to protect people who actually at high risk of dying from disease. For people who are at low risk of dying from it, or where the lockdowns are worse than the disease, like children is a good example. We close our schools. We're not protecting our children from the disease because they don't die. The disease is actually not all that dangerous to them. Fewer children have died from COVID in past year than they died from the flu, even though the flu disappeared in the fall. So we just harm children with the lockdown, right? So for them, the vaccine is not that useful. That's why we didn't test it in children. So I think the right way to use the vaccine is protect the vulnerable, and then the rest of the population. The disease actually has already spread pretty widely. We in effect, these lockdowns are a version of let it rip, except it's let it rip among the poor, right? It's protected the Zoom class.
Got it. Hey, yeah. Jay, I have one. Here's my last one. And then maybe we'll let Laurence Fox, whom you're now advising, ask a question or two if he'd care to.
Looks like I'm advising you, Peter, just FYI.
No. I'm asking these questions. You know, you have to help a politician along. And now he had a good life and now he's given it up to become a politician. So here's another Laurence Fox tweet, which is just from yesterday again. The government in Britain are saying, build back better. That seems to be their slogan for who knows what they're going to roll out as they end the lockdown. So here's what Mr. Fox tweets. Stop saying, build back better. Like it's the next logical step on from stay at home. Build back freer. Build back freer. That's what we want to hear. And I put it to you, Dr. Bhattacharya, that they're both wrong. The slogan should be build back safer, shouldn't it?
I think I'm closer to Lawrence than I am to you, Peter, on this one. I don't know what safer means here, right? I mean, I think the lockdowns are it's the worst economic policy decision I've ever seen. I mean, I've been calling them trickle-down epidemiology. I mean, it's this absolutely devastating attack on the poor and the middle class. Letting people do their thing is good. I mean, the economy, there's all kinds of issues we had before the lockdown. Do I trust the people that imposed the lockdown to build back better? I just don't. I have no idea that how they're thinking about the economy. I don't know what they mean by build back better. So best I can tell, it's trillions of dollars of spending on things that I don't think are particularly productive. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm cynical about politics, Peter.
But what about build back freer? What about build back freer? That's just irresponsible, isn't it?
No, Lawrence. I mean, isn't build back safer? Isn't safetyism the problem here? Because, I mean, at the root of we can't take offense, nobody should be offended by anything, is the idea that safety has to suffuse absolutely every single human interaction. But when life itself is inherently unsafe, or is constrained to the point of go on.
We've lost, and lovely to meet you, Jay. Hi. We've lost COVID is a victim again of the debate. Jay is influential in bringing about the Great Barrington Declaration, which made a huge mistake of suggesting that people had brains and that they could think for themselves, which was awful. And but what happened was in the UK, and I think globally actually, was people just went, we're not going to listen to that part of the discussion. We're going to silence the discussion over this. And, great preeminent epidemiologists and evidence-based medicine, proper experts in this area were silenced. And then what happened was the lockdown mongers and the control freaks got in charge of the situation. And whenever you put mankind in charge of imposing something over his fellow man, it tends to end really badly. So I think Build Back Freer is absolutely the way you want to do. You want to empower people to embrace their freedom and to protect it. And what the Great Barrington Declaration was suggesting would, when we look back in history, that will be when they say we made the wrong turn there. And unfortunately, our children will be crawling around in the mud paying for it. But that's what happened, I think.
But underneath the idea of freedom is that the fear that people will use this freedom to do the wrong thing, to build the wrong thing, to say the wrong thing, that they have to be directed to the proper things, and that freedom is only useful in as much as it guides us to the proper conclusions, which is a distrust of humanity and a belief somehow that if you let people have their reins, that instead of building the society in which you live, they will build something that is horrible, racist, xenophobic, sexist, and the rest of it. Anyway, Stephen, you had a question.
Yeah, well, I've got a question for Jay and Lawrence both. And by the way, I'm going to call you Dr. J because it saves time and also reminds me of the other Dr. J of my youth. And you both can throw down slam dunks to beat everybody. Dr. J, I have been struck by, as this whole thing unfolded a year ago, by how many of these public health directors I see on TV are not medical doctors. Most of them, or many of them, seem to have their degrees in public health administration, which means they're bureaucrats with health stamped on their diploma. Is this new? Has this been going on for a long time? And then the variation for you, Lawrence, is this the similar situation in Britain? Is the Britain public health system also dominated by non-medical experts in bureaucracy and who are largely politicized? I'll let either one of you go first with that.
Steve, go ahead, Lawrence.
No, you go. Yeah, sorry, I was saying after you.
So I think the problem is really the set of perspectives inside public health and this decision making is way too narrow, right? And frankly, I don't think it should just be public health people, obviously, but also not just doctors. I think as we've seen now from this past year, the decisions these public health folks make can affect every single human being. In ways, just devastating ways. Other perspectives need to be at the table when these decisions are made. In principle, our political leaders are supposed to represent us when in that, right? But they've been cowed by these public health officials because of the fear of COVID. I think I'm trying to think of like systematic ways to like bring those perspectives into, because this is a political process ultimately. Right? It's a political decision by governors, by presidents, by the prime ministers. So like having a broader set of perspectives that can push back against essentially a very, very scared set of people, the public health folks, who don't have any notion of opportunity costs, any notion that there's more to life than infection control. That's going to be critically important, because there are going to be future pandemics. We can't let this happen again.
It's very interesting because obviously the UK has a slightly different healthcare model, and but it's now we're told relentlessly, stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives, and this is it's a sort of mantra that the government throw at us all the time. But ultimately, you're ending up in this very cognitively dissonant area where you're going, hang on a minute, isn't the NHS meant to protect us? And then if you say that, people go racist, bigot, whatever, and you're sort of like, well, sorry, I'm very confused. And the National Health Service here is the sacred cow. It's almost the religion that we have to follow in the United Kingdom. And I suppose I have a feeling that the National Health Service should probably be the National Accident and Emergency Service rather than the National Health Service. So, if you're literally bleeding out, then go and they'll help you out, and, spend the money on other stuff, because the middle management is terrible, and you're forced. I'm blocked by the National Health Service, for example, on Twitter, and the people that go for the National Health Service, just for pointing out a few things, and they just attack and attack and attack. So they're an unimpeachable. If you live in a society where there's where the main institution, you're not allowed to criticize it. You're not allowed to criticize the Godhead. It's a religion, right? That's what we're living in. It's a religion of national health, and I think they're going to come out of this pretty badly, because they're asking for a 12.5% pay rise today, having been offered a 1.5% pay rise by the government. And the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, is going, yeah, let's give it to them. And they're like, how are you going to pay for it? And he's like, doesn't matter, let's give it to them. And it's like, people are losing their entire livelihoods, like 100% pay reductions. And the National Health Service, they're just out of touch with the people. That's ultimately what's happened. Sorry for waffling.
Dr. J, we know you have to go because you have lives to save, COVID to cure, and the rest of it. So we send you off, and we'll discuss. We'll have a special all board games edition of the Ricochet podcast soon, and we'll get you there and talk about things that you actually like, as opposed to the grim things we require you to say. But thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. And Laurence, we know it's 6:00 where you are at the moment.
It's gin o'clock, isn't it?
Yes, it was. And I know you have to go as well, which is a pity, because I would love to talk to you about the British stage and the British theatrical community, because I, myself personally, was in a play with Richard Curtis's mother-in-law, Jill Freeman. Yes, in a Suffolk Village Hall about 2 years ago, which entitles me, I think, we're peers, essentially, not in the British sense, but equals when it comes to that. Side by side with a 93-year-old.
Than I.
Well, it was one performance only, and it was quite something to work with a legend, but that's another podcast. So do you, in addition to keeping to starting the new party, I assume though that you have to keep acting. I mean, you have to keep that part of your career going, or have you just consigned that to the margins for the while you work on this initiative? Because that has to be tremendously frustrating not to be able to do your craft.
Well, my agent gave me the hoof. So I got kicked out by my agent for having the wrong views. But also, I mean, there's a couple of good things that come from that. One is I turn on the TV and I often very struggle to see whether I want to be in any of this stuff that is on. It's sort of monochromatic cultural rubbish. And the other thing is I did just get offered a job, actually, an acting job. But I don't really have time at the moment. But I would quite like to do it. I do love acting.
Well, maybe we get Rob Long back and get you cast in a movie with Gina Carano.
Yes. Good for her, Yeah. And also, what a very peaceful and lovely woman she seemed to be. I watched her Sunday special with Ben Shapiro, and I thought, this is an asset to someone on set. Yeah. This is, you don't want a set full of people going, don't say that, you can't say that, don't say that, that's not good. No, I wouldn't act like that. Which is what you get from hard. You just want someone to walk on and be easy and breezy and peaceful and loving. That's what you want on set. It's a balance of both, isn't it? We need.
But she's also capable of breaking your neck with her shins.
You're damn right. She looks like she is. Yeah,
she is, and that's one of the reasons that we love her. Lawrence, it's been a great pleasure, and we'd love to have you on again and again to discuss this and any variety of other issues. I know that Peter Robinson is going to want to talk to you. He's got this immensely popular show that he's doing this little thing like it's maybe questionable. All right, he'll replay the tape. And then after enough times we've had you in the Ricochet podcast, we require the guest to do a reading. So we will have you give your most Shakespearean tones to a Kitty Poo Club cat commercial, which I think will be the apotheosis of your career, political and theatrical.
That would be for me. That's bucket list right there.
Like Laurence Fox, thank you so much for joining us. The first of all, we hope our many podcasts. Good luck. Give our regards to Blighty, and thanks.